All right, let's kick things off. Hey,
Let's
everyone.
do it.
Glad for you to be part of this conversation today. It's kind of fun. This topic came about because Steve wrote a really amazing email to me and kind of just dialoguing and processing what is actually going on with this industry. The struggle of what value we have given our clients, or how do we sell value over hours, has always kind of been there, but it is becoming very, very obvious now as technology is evolving and the hours are just simply disappearing. The number of hours it takes to do something becomes fewer and fewer. Um, so I'm going to put Steve in the hot seat today and kind of hear and see more of what he's got going on this way. But we'd love to get some of your feedback, obviously, and have you guys be part of this conversation as it rolls out. Um, all right,
Absolutely.
Steve, let's give it to you. I want you to kick this thing off because you kind of started this ball rolling with the email, anyways. What gave you this
Yeah.
original thought?
Okay. So this goes back at about 2 weeks ago, and I know we've all been talking about AI ad nauseum to death and blah 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 blah, and we understand and et cetera. We're working with it and everything, but the moment that really hit me was a very good friend, an old coworker of mine, sent me a text, and in it was like he just generated an After Effects project file complete with graphics, with animation, with everything out of whether it was Chat or Claude or something else. And I realized that dawned on me at that moment that like I can't, for those of you who don't know me, like I came up through the early desktop revolution in the early 90s. I was fortunate enough to be one of the few beta testers of Avid back in 1987. So early digital I'd been involved with. And but during that entire and even through the 90s, yes, as everything cratered out, there still was a floor, right? It's still we got to a floor level of what it cost to do something. So with my first agency, post houses were for a fling were billing out at I think 1,000 to 1,200 an hour. Tim,
Yeah.
keep me honest around that,
No, yeah,
right?
it's about right. Yeah.
Um, and then we were billing out 2,000 to 2,500 a day. And everyone thought we were bottoming out the market. But I'm like, no, this is just, we functionally couldn't charge more than that. Didn't make any sense at the time. But now when I got that text, it dawned on me that this is the first time how we've kind of completely decoupled execution from creative in a way, right? So the execution itself stops becoming a functional, meaningful unit of value, right? Because I just generated out. So then it got into this big existential thing around, well, what does that mean, right? When we, even though we talked about how have to get out of billable hours, like I was talking to a client the other day, and he's like, okay, well, this bid's going to go out to 4 companies. Each 4 companies is going to do the first trailer or teaser. It's going to be, 20K, 40K, 60K, whatever that number was for that thing. And then we get one revision. And then the remaining time is billable by the hour. Right? And the industry still works that way. Or if you're doing something, you figure out your measurement, what the budget is, and everything. So hours was always part of the conversation, even though you tried to mask it. And so, you know, we were able to reconcile that contradiction on how we bundled it together. No, they're really paying for my creative, but no, they're really paying for time. But we kind of layered it together, so it was
Yeah.
okay. So what
But
the
there
question?
still was a schedule. Let's just say like the client awarded you a project, in a certain amount of days, a certain amount of weeks before it was delivered, because they knew it took time to produce that project. No matter how many hours you were going to put into it or
Totally,
not,
totally.
there was a schedule based on that. And nowadays, like to generate something within
Yeah,
minutes or hour or a day, so that would take weeks
yeah.
before, totally changes that concept of why do I delegate it to you and have you specialize in something if it doesn't take that kind of time away
That's
from
right.
me for doing it. I could just do it myself, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I
Maybe
mean,
some
so
of
like,
those.
what happens when time and value stop moving together? What do you do? Right. And
That's right.
that was really ultimately the big question. And so I put together, so I spent some time and kind of went, because it really became like this, a truly an existential threat, because we knew there was value there, right? If now we can honestly, not in an exaggeration, but honestly say that um, as the sum total of all human knowledge is accessible to anyone at any time. And that's a truism. That's a fact, right?
Yes. Yep.
That anyone's access to anything. And within reason, anyone can kind of create anything, or by the end of the year. I mean, what just happened in the new chat app with the work function and Codex now is a
Yeah.
game changer. It's not dissimilar to what happened when the first iPhone came out. It's
Yeah.
that big of a revolution of what's happening, and that was 30 days ago. It's happening so fast
Yeah.
that we have to get in front of it, and we have to figure out. So knowledge becomes completely democratized, and then execution becomes democratized. So at the same time, we can inherently say there's still value, and we know there's value, but we can't quantify it, right?
So
That's our job now to do that.
so let's break it down maybe. Like maybe we can do like a discovery of where value comes from or how it's proposed, right?
Right,
So originally we would have used terms like time and materials because a lot of stuff we were
right,
doing was quite literally in the physical space. Like if you were shooting film, it's a physical product. It took storage to keep it around, and it took physical items to do something in film. Even if it was on tape, there was still a physical element to it, and you
right,
burned through tape. So there was material that you were covering, not to mention the hand building, hand making time material elements to it. So time and material is something that would say, I don't know, millennia that we've
yeah,
always kind of heard as a value proposition. When we got to digital, now all of a sudden the material element of it kind of disappeared. So we asked a new question of what is value? And when you got to basically digital distribution, we also didn't have to buy time anymore. Where analog television was very
that's right.
slotted, there's only
Yeah,
24 hours a day. Now we can do mass distribution. So time and material really kind of broke up in the digital revolution. And in a lot of ways, we've been having a conversation about value because a time and material proposition, a bid form in a digital space doesn't really have the same possibility. I can make infinite
yeah,
copies of something in a digital
right,
space, right?
right.
But it always took a creator. What the evolution is now is that we have the time and material space, or the digital evolution took place, and now the creator space is no longer needed. So really we'll say like specialized element of using a certain piece of software to get something done. So a really
Mm-hmm.
amazing editor that knows how to
Yep.
use Final Cut
Yeah,
or
that's
something like
right.
that.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
That's what's breaking down now. But there still is a value proposition somewhere, right? Because a
yeah.
human has to make a decision and humans are consuming it. So because there's humans on each side, they're going to find a value prop to it. We just have to find the new, I don't know,
Right.
thing to
And
attach that value to.
and that's a lot of what the work that I've been doing with my clients right now is figuring out how do we move, I call it the migration of value. So like how do we move that through? And so I've kind of put together what I think is, and the good news is that the answer is yes, there is value. So it's not this dystopian gloom and doom kind of like there are 100%. But if you're not careful about moving yourself in there, you will be the next Kodak, right? You will be the next taxi cab. You will be the next fill in the blank when the disruptor comes in.
That's
And
right.
so of those 5 beats, I kind of look at it like this. So the first beat is, and this beat has been going on since the turn of the 20th century, 19th century, 20th century, which I say is like technology democratizes access. So when a new technology comes in, so whether it's like the Belle Epoque and the invention of four color process printing, right, which turned the streets of Paris into an open art, like poster art, right, as we call it today. So once that technology democratizes access, which is amazing, which a lot of us grew up through, and a lot of us owe our careers through that democratization of
That's right.
technology, right? The second beat comes in, which I think every technological evolution creates a creative revolution. So we saw this in the 60s. We saw this in the 80s, in the 2000s, right? And we're seeing it now. It's like, so whether it's the 60s and being able to live broadcast a war into your homes. The 80s with desktop publishing, the 90s with desktop design, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So, and that creative revolution, which is really interesting, is it 100% moves culture forward, and we're going to see that in an incredible way over the next 5 years. But it brings us into this third beat, which is like if we democratize the technology and reduce the barriers to entry, we have a bigger supply of creatives that come into place, and that so becomes a glut. Then the third beat is like that value will always move towards scarcity, right? Anything that is scarce will still be valuable.
That's the goal, right?
That's the
Yeah.
goal, right?
But when
And
you
what's interesting,
democratize something, you're saying if you democratize something and it's more readily available, the value kind of disappears when it's
the value
more
disappears.
ubiquitous. Yeah, sure.
That's right. That's 100%. Exactly. And those areas that are still somewhat protected is where the value stays. And that's just
Okay.
laws of fundamental, macroeconomics, right? So then what I find really interesting, going back to Uber and, Instagram, Kodak and taxi cabs and similar, is that today's organizations, for some reason, always defend yesterday's monetizations, meaning my company is hardwired to make money a certain way. That's not how I know how to make money, right? And so I don't want to move that because if I'm running that large company and I'm getting incentivized for quarterly returns, I'm getting my bonus at the end of the year because I'm inherently hardwired to turn short-term revenue, right?
That's right. Yeah.
But if I went into my boss or into my shareholders, into the board and said, "Hey, I'm going to drop this massive capital expenditure on something to take a bet on this technology," they're going to go say, "You go blank yourself. There's no way that we're doing that." So the engine moves into this space, which is our first kind of shining light, if you will, is that a lot of people will never make that move. But if you have the insight of actually knowing that you can make the move, then that's something that's actually really, really good, right?
Sure.
Um, and then finally, I think the last beat, so you can see how my logic is moving, but the last beat ends up being around that just because you have access to that space
Yeah.
doesn't mean it necessarily is an advantage, right?
Right.
So
My
just because you're
mom doesn't take better pictures on her iPhone than she ever did with anything else. She's yeah.
100%, that's a
Yeah.
great example, right? So then what is it? Right? So we see this migration. Where does it actually go? And what's interesting is that, you know, say what you will about Malcolm Gladwell, his earlier work or his later work, but his early stuff and really around his 10,000 hours
Yeah.
is 100% true. It's not
Yeah.
just that you have knowledge, it's your unique perspective on that space, your life experience that brought you this moment to be hardwired to think a different way about it, which is truly where that value really exists. And
Yeah.
to me, that's interesting. So that doesn't solve the monetization part, but that shows you like that absolutely shows you the positioning part of where you need to actually start connecting yourself.
So let's pinpoint it to this maybe, where let's say there's decision points, right? The one thing interesting I've learned recently is that the reason why an AI generated piece of art is not copywritten is because nobody made creative decisions in order to make it. So copyrights are preserved
Mhm.
for humans because it takes humans decision making. Technology can't do that, can't make decisions in the same way. So you realize, okay, well, the decision making process on the creative side is somewhat what makes it the creative element, not just the output, but the person's process, why they did what they did, how they did it, and what they pushed to do it. That's why a Van Gogh looks so different than a Monet. It's the
Right,
why
right.
behind it, and then the process, the decisions that person made to get that output to it. On the other side, the value proposition, besides the creative proposition, is someone has to decide to spend the money. If you're going to get my
Right.
money out of my pocket, I have to decide to do it. So I have to understand some value. There is like a slight contradiction of like how much money people spend on a Starbucks coffee, readily available, but still willing
Hmm.
to give $6 for something that they could make at home for 50 cents.
Right.
So there's an experience that we usually want to go for, and that experience process, I'm willing to pay the extra $4.50 for the coffee because I get the Starbucks experience when they make it for me or something like that. So
Hmm.
there is like an element of economics where I'll give up the money. But when I'm talking about the creative space that we're in, the decision points has to be something more along the lines of what you're saying, which is, well, I need to keep my job. I need to get audience to look at the thing I'm making. I need people to watch my show or subscribe to our platform or buy a product with the commercial I'm
Right.
making. And
Right.
we're still working within decisions. And I think there's a human element of that. Not that technology can't do that at higher volume, but there is an element that we're still decoding something. And the people that know how to decode, encode and decode, create, and then sell back at value, that's that's the the value prop that we still have available to us. And it might take us 10,000 hours. So it might only take us 3,000 hours in the future or 1,000 hours with technology, but it's going to take some time to understand that
Well,
process.
I always think it's going to take the proverbial 10,000 hours, and I'll tell you why. Because we're going to keep it is. I think that there is the saying of $1,000 is under the assumption that no one else is doing the same thing, and so you're building. If you so let me say another way. If you had to invent math every time you needed to add, you would never get anywhere. So we have a new foundation of knowledge, and you put your 10,000 hours on top of that, then you're going to get even further, right? And
That's
you're
right.
going to continue to push it forward. So, and this is a conversation that my daughters who are 22 and 19, both in college, are having as well. Is that in with like you still have to do the work because the work works connects the synapses, which drives the learning, which allows you to process the sum total of human knowledges to your space. But I think what's interesting for us is getting back onto the agency side. It's if we are decoupling output, right, from from they're valuing your perspective, and your perspective is based on what? I'm going to say, and this one's in being a former, I'll say broadcast designer, because that's what I was, and so it's what it was called back in the day, but motion designer, or a trailer editor, or if you're doing digital, or
Yeah, yeah.
or key art or whatever.
Yeah, game designer,
Um, yeah, ultimately, at the end of the day, your job is to keep people as acquisition, retention, ticket sales, conversion, right? That's as a commercial artist, right? That's
yeah.
what our job is. And so where I'm trying to push all the people that I work with is how do you define the new value of what you're doing, right? And can we go into the clients with a different set of our
Yeah.
and we're starting to do that. And it's
And will the
actually
client believe us when we say the words? Because sometimes you're wondering what the clients are skeptical nowadays that we're doing any work too. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, like someone who has a SaaS platform may be better served to do the integration for free in context to be able to get a upside off the back end of the whole thing, right?
That's right.
Um, Versus just saying I'm going in through the front door, or like I'm working and this working with someone. I just started talking with them, which was more of a traditional kind of promo house. But as they're working with their clients, how do we redefine with them what that success is? And so that they quantify, because the day will come where they're not going to be shooting commercials anymore, doing 60s, 30s, 10s. It's just going to, and that's just going to happen. I'm telling you, it's going to happen this year.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah. Even like go back to a little bit of that time and material thought is that,
yeah,
even in the digital time, there was still rendering time and there was
right.
still like storage space. But think about like a game engine, how now there's no more rendering time, it's live rendering. Like in a way, like that
Yeah,
disappears. And the need to store something is basic, it's kind of dissipates.
yeah,
What this technology evolution feels like it can do is it can create that commercial now without time and material, even that. It can just basically generate the commercial
Sure.
for you for your thing, and then it's consumed. It disappears as soon as it's generated, almost like the game engine part of it. So there will still be decision points of where it's going to go or what platform it's going to be
Hmm.
on or how it's going to be distributed and so on. But there's going to be even fewer elements at play of like storing it and a one to many element to it. It might be a one to
Right.
one kind of
But
creation.
yeah. Well, by the way, totally. So
Yeah.
interestingly, this is a side note, but this too on the one-to-one creation, which I think this is really interesting. So my wife's business is jewelry. So she's estate jewelry. She has her business. It's phenomenal. She has six different platforms that she's using, none of which talk to each other. So she's on Shopify, her stuff's on Sortly, she used Klaviyo for this. She has another thing called Gem Lightbox for this. And I'm trying to deal, like get him with an API. So I literally, like, it came to me earlier this week and I said, I wonder if I can actually create a custom platform for her. And so I literally spent 4 hours. I have the prototype and done.
Yeah.
It's a CMS, a CRM. It does invoicing. It does consolidation. It prints out monthly reports, everything, right?
Yeah.
And then when I looked at it, I'm like, this is great, but it looks like it's QuickBooks, right? And then I went back to it and I said, look, I gave an exact detailed description of how my wife's brain processes. We've been married,
Yeah.
20 plus years at this point,
Yeah.
and that she's slightly ADD. She wants two, three things to look at, regenerated. So now I have a custom software solution, customized not just for the business, but for the way the person thinks. And so, to your point, going back to where the value exists in how do you actually move forward how does your unique perspective move that person's objectives forward? So the closer that we can get as as agencies to where the money is made and truly having that conversation with a client. Now, old guard
Yeah.
clients are going to be difficult, of course, to do. But with some of these new ones, are really just saying, ultimately, what are you trying to monetize? And
Yeah.
how do
You're
we
you're
move
you're kind of pointing to one of the things that I've realized is like it's the end of software as a service. To be honest, it's not like you just
100%?
yeah.
Yes, totally,
Why
totally.
even
Yeah,
pay for it? But
yeah.
and our relationship with the internet is completely changed now. We're using the connectivity of the internet, and we're using the data that's on the internet, but the way we're interfacing with it, and then the way we're going to create new information will not be on web pages and that kind of stuff. Mark said something really
No.
great. He says the value is in the evaluating of the problem and making the right creative decisions. The difference is in which people are making those creative decisions. And I think Mark's kind of hitting on to something like there really is the people making decisions on the creative side, right? That's where the value has always been evaluating what the problem is and then making those creative decisions. And then it's who's going to make them specifically. Nice to meet you, Dave. Who's going to make them specifically, and then what's going to happen to it as it plays out. That's what we don't quite know yet. And I think we're all kind of struggling with. There is a reality. We should say, like, it's not happening. It hasn't happened yesterday. And it might not even happen tomorrow or next year, where the software we're using is also evolving underneath our fingers. So Photoshop or,
Yeah,
the
I would
Axon
move it.
tools, whatever.
Yeah, I would move it further. So like I'm looking at and Mark, you're right, but I would also say that key art that you're developing, what did it convert? And what was the success of it? So like if I were to say, for instance, okay, here's a great case in point. Spider-Man Brand New Day, um, obviously the juggernaut, all the accolades, everyone knows it, like the fourth highest grossing movie all time, blah, 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 hit the projections out of the water. If you fundamentally look at the key art's not great. It's not great key art. It doesn't speak to it at all. But they understood, who designed that key art, exactly the demo that needed to hit, that was going to super serve it, that was going to bring the parents in because they already were going to have the fanboys. So they didn't need to do that. So it's actually a brilliant case study of the perspective that team had that did the key art of what it had to accomplish, that someone like me who has not done key art would have done. you know I won't do a spoiler alert. Sadie Silk Sink's character against Spider-Man tied to this thing and give it all away.
Yeah.
That's your perspective. And I think what I'm trying to instill with everyone who's watching and listening is that we have to get better about valuing and validating exactly why we're doing the creative and what
Yeah.
the outcome was, and then being able to substantiate those results that you were part of that. And once again, that key art to me was a really interesting exercise of saying it's counterintuitive of what I would do. It's not great key art of what I would look like for blockbuster key art, but sure as hell did that job in a way that wouldn't have thought of.
Okay, so let's put the real challenge before us and see
Yeah.
if we can kind of get some brass tacks here. It feels like the bid form is going to be the struggle, right? Because if what the way we've always proposed value to
Yeah.
clients and justified it is we had this document with rows and columns that did a little bit of math for us and we showed it and we said, here, there's proof that you owe me $25,000.
Okay.
And the columns are time, rate, right?
Right.
Days, number of days, rate per day equals a value. And we've used that over and over and over again. It's a language we speak. I put a bid together. I get to Disney. Disney, who knows how to read the bid? They know how to even argue about the bid and come back to us. And we have this common language.
Right.
The struggle that we're coming up to is that now that bid form is dissolving, or there's a zero. How many days? 0 days times whatever the rate is, you're going to get zero
Yeah.
for that line item. Because that's going down to
Right.
zero, what is the language? What is the form? How do we actually put that in front of our clients and have them understand that they still owe us 25 grand, even though it only is going to take us a couple hours to do it?
So I'm going to say something that's probably not going to be. You asked early in the conversation. I say a couple hard things. So here is something
Yeah.
that not everyone's going to agree with. I wonder if the conversation around like the multi-pitch, no fee, you know, thing has been a disservice to me. So, like, if I had an agency today, and someone came to me and they said, "Okay, we want you to do the show." Like, show. I used to do a ton of show opens. We want you to do the show open, um, and I know that I can do the show open for $500 by the end of the year, right? And I'm saying like a bad reality show open. I know I can do it for $500. Why wouldn't I do the whole thing for $500 to get it to convert something more significant on the back end? Why wouldn't I want to invest and say, great, I'll do it, but here's what I want in return? If so, like I think we're thinking way too transactional, way too early in the process of, especially if I'm going to value my work not on hours but on performance, then
Yeah.
I want to actually, and it doesn't cost me anything to do the work, or cost me a fraction of what it used to, then I should really be valuing my revenue or my what I'm getting off of it, off of the performance of it. And we have to
So,
come up with a common language around what that performance is, or the
and
KPI, I should say.
don't we need to know? Okay, so
Right. What are the
I don't
KPIs of
want to
what you
go.
want to? So
Yeah.
like, okay, let's just say, great, I'm going to go in on this with you. I believe in this thing.
Okay.
And let's just make it easy metrics. And I'll show up and say, I'm going to do some social content for you. And we're going to say, look, if we can do these numbers, which I think I can do, and I know how to do it, I want to be incentivized off of those numbers.
Yeah. Okay. But I think those numbers are also changing, right? So, for example, let's say
Right.
content becomes 1 to 1. So I'm not making one show that a million people watch. I'm making a million shows that a million people
Got it.
watch.
Sure.
So now there's either a subscription platform that people are
Right.
getting that service to. And so that driving force activation of that subscription platform is a key piece. And we already have models for this. Video games are kind of built that way.
Yeah.
You get on and you burn tons of hours of your time playing a video game.
Right.
So there's an element there so I can drive you that way. Or somehow I'm able to convert something that says, hey, when I get that visibility, when I have your attention, you're also spending money by the second, by the frame. So here's an example. For example, when Xerox technology came out, the issue was is they were replacing the technology before, which took a lot of time and material to do it.
Yeah, yeah.
And Xerox realized we can't charge the same. So what they did was they would lease the equipment to the
Hmm.
end user and they charge by the page. So all of
Yeah,
a sudden, like it wasn't the technology advancement because this you didn't need a to
yeah,
do it.
yeah.
You just press a button and a million pages came out. So like it's not a time equation. And you were paying for the end user said, this is so much faster. I'm willing to give you more money because I can get 500 pages in 50 seconds or
Right.
whatever, right? So there are past equations where like speed actually became the value proposition because you can do things in a shorter period. I can
That's
make a
right.
million shows for a million people. That's a value proposition more than I can make one show for a million people over a 2 year
Yeah,
period.
right. And in that context, I think so did you ever spend any time in corporate, like corporate?
You mean back in my days? No, not really.
Yeah, okay.
Only
So
hanging
like,
out with you. Hanging out at the Promax headquarters was probably as corporate as I've ever got. Does that
yeah,
count?
not very corporate. But so I spent some time in I was running global creative for Fortune 500, and the way we were incentivized for end of year bonuses was personal, like what I did, and what your boss thought you did, overall division, and then overall company. Now, the overall company was like, I had no goal, but I had skin in the game. The whole company performed, right? And there were good
Sure.
years and bad years. And that to me seems like the most egalitarian way of doing it. Versus, I hear you with the Xerox, but we have to figure out a way, and it has to be on a client to client basis where you stop charging based on something that inherently will be free to produce by the end of the year.
Yeah.
Your value is based on how you actually achieve the overall business objectives of you, your team, and the whole company of who you're doing work for. That's why they're hiring you. So if
I
we can
totally get
form
that.
right, if we can form a new form a new language around that, and I'm trying to work on this with my clients and their clients, like how we do that, because ultimately I kind of don't want to charge for the upfront stuff if it's free. It doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter if it costs you no time at all to do it, because it will cost you no time at all to do it. It's your unique perspective, your 10,000 hours that allow you to see why that key art for Spider-Man was actually brilliant and how it achieved the number four highest grossing open and blah, 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 right? My
Yeah. I mean,
superlatives are wrong, but you know what I'm saying?
going back to Mark's statement, because there's actually a lot of understanding in that value too. Imagine in the future, you make all your money in the first day. You say, oh, it's really simple. My engagement is $25,000. And then I will come to your office and I will make whatever I make for $25,000. But it's predetermined, flat rate or whatever, just to show up. And then it doesn't matter if it takes 1 hour or 3 days or
Yeah,
whatever. That's just part of the
that's
promise. You'll get the thing delivered.
Yeah, once again, we are a first time where we've decoupled output from human time. And that's
Yeah.
really like a fundamental thing. So that's like the your human time tied to your output for the majority of our career. That's not the case anymore at all, right?
Yeah.
When I can spin up custom, SaaS solutions for my wife's business, over a cup of coffee and a glass of wine, right?
Yeah.
Um,
In
so
that order, by the way. You have to do the coffee first and then the glass of wine.
Yeah,
That's
and it's
the
separated by
celebration.
about 8 hours, but
Is it a Chardonnay?
um,
Was it white wine? Yeah,
of course, it's showing that.
of course.
Um,
It's always a Chardonnay for you.
but I mean, so I mean, I do think that like the more that you can think about innovate, and now it's really difficult with your existing client base who has a creative services team that works a certain way and performs a certain way. But we all know that a lot of those legacy media opportunities are dwindling by the day, not
Yeah.
like cratering, but they are shrinking. And so I would hope that everyone on this call right now is looking for new opportunities and new avenues in different areas to work, right? To build new client bases. And if you aren't, you need to. Um, and then in those areas, the conversations that you can have you should be thinking differently around how you want to be paid off of it. they can come to you and say, how much is it going to cost? And you can say, well, look, if I can do this logo, or I can do this animation, or I can do the stack for next to nothing, maybe I ought to think about a different way. Maybe I ought to be tied to your success if I believe in the company, if I believe in what you're
Yeah,
doing.
so tricky. That tied to success thing, it's always manipulation at the end. I always find like, when you sign up, when you produce a
Yeah.
feature film, when you make a television show, they're like, hey, we'll split everything at the end. And all of a sudden, somehow all the
Well,
promotion
that
dollars
doesn't
gets to
work.
the
Yeah.
studio.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Same
but
over
I would
here.
but I would argue to say there's no other option at that point. The other
Well,
option is
Mark, why aren't you with us, Mark? You're just, all the wisdom's coming from today. He says this, like, ideas are not instant, which is a great idea of like, a great thing to recognize is like, there's
yeah,
actually a lot of value in time that we currently give away for free in order
agreed.
to get paid for the time of it. And now we can almost flip the model and say, since the time is zero, why don't we start getting paid for our ideas? So ideas are not free. They take time to research and find concept, whether
Hmm.
it's trailer, key art, digital campaign, and then the prompts come after the time, after that, and then time is saved in
Right.
the
Right.
execution part of it.
Yeah,
So
that's
there's
well said.
almost even a way of like, maybe there's an opportunity to slow things down on the concepting. We've been so fast on the concepting and then spending all our time in execution,
I
or
love that. Yeah.
even worse, deciding as we execute. Because the technology is making it so cheap, we can just have 9 versions of something instead of only having one version and executing up front, like you'd have to with the real model. So there's almost like a return to something, or there's a possibility of a proposition earlier than later. We're just not
Yeah,
familiar with that conversation.
and we still need to train the clients on that part of the conversation too. The
Yeah.
client might not necessarily understand that because we have done a disservice in how and I say that and this is, this goes back a generation. It's not anyone on this call, but this is just the construct in which we started working. Is always we're like, here's your bid form, right?
Yeah.
Here's like it's from the days of
AICP, they broke
yeah,
us. Yeah, yeah.
exactly, yeah.
Mark, how do
Um,
we do? Did we bastardize your idea, or is that kind of what you were thinking there? Yeah, yeah. Thank
that
you.
means yes, we bastardized
Yeah,
Mark's idea.
we yeah, totally screwed it up.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. There is so I think the training now is, what do we say and how do we say it to our clients, right? When do we
hmm,
bring up the idea of the technology we're using? How do we bring it up so that they're excited that we're using this technology, that we can do things at
yeah,
a bigger scale, make things easier for them and for us,
yeah.
but not have to go find
So
100 clients when we used to only have 10 because we
yeah,
burned through the clients in a short amount of time. How do we keep and maintain those client relationships is another key element.
I was literally having this conversation today with someone. So I remember um, I used to with a discovery network of families or family of networks back. This is back in like the late early 2000s. Remember when Apple Instant Messenger first came on the scene and like you could text your clients from. So luckily, like my client and I were on AIM and she
Yeah.
would just aim or whatever. So she would just
No, AIM was AOL, right?
was
Wasn't it?
AOL, right?
Yeah. So
Anyway,
this
but
would
it
have to be
was
the other one. Yeah. Yeah. I
whatever
messed.
it
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
She would just text me things like I need to get this done, I need to get this done. And so we were able to shorthand. The tech allowed us to tighten and we did a ton of work just that way. So over the weekend, I built my first multi-agent software for for a client. So basically, I had Chat help build this out for me. I have a managing partner, research and insights, strategy, creative director, and then something I'm calling the red team, which is like the naysayer, right? Why it doesn't work.
We all have
So
red
I,
teams in our
yeah,
agents. Yes.
totally,
Yeah. You have to
yeah,
have red teams.
yeah. So then it's actually a custom solution specifically for that client, working with them on strategy. So all my docs are years of conversations and notes are in there that I have open. I made an API that connects them all together. So long story short, I kind of start seeing this world in which I can actually have these custom multi agents for each client. And by
Yeah.
the way, it seems more daunting than it is. It's really not
Yeah.
that daunting at all. And then from that point, I can choose to bring the client in on it. if I want to, and have them part of this ideation together. Because once again, they're not paying for my hours just because it's spun up in a moment. They're paying for my perspective and
Yeah.
our job of driving business for them. So I kind of see that if we can, it's the first thing that hit me really in the last couple of days. Like if I can get that together, work with a client on a common platform, you can kind of create a much more sticky relationship with them that you both value because you've built this out.
Yeah, to some degree, what you're saying. One, I agree with you, and I'll pitch this idea as because you said it that I think in the next couple of weeks, one of these conversations, we're going to do a workshop, and we're going to have people build their own agents because I've it feels like more and more people are building agents, and they might or might not know how to do it properly. So
Yeah, yeah,
I think it might be healthy to spend a few hours trying it out and building certain agents, so everyone at least
yeah.
understands what this economy is like. But to some degree, what you're saying, Steve, is hey, with the new technology, there's also an opportunity of building the Xerox machine. And you're
That's right.
really
That's
saying, hey,
exactly
let's
right.
go
Yeah,
build a machine. And then there might be an understanding of the economy that every output they get from the machine, and I'll maintain it, kind of keep it going. But you don't need me anymore to make you the Adobe file anymore, the After Effects file. You can make the After Effects file. You just need my input into the machine that makes that come out of it. And I know
yeah.
more and more people are trying that. And I know there's issues and there's wins and losses as people are trying to build this stuff.
Yeah,
But it feels like we're moving in a way that is a possible proposition for us.
yeah. I think that I agree, and I think when I first started using chat, it's probably 3.0 or 3.1 or something, and I felt guilty about using it because I wasn't spending the hours to actually develop the strategy. And it's so flipped 180 at this point where I'm doing a disservice to the client and I'm wasting my time if I'm not using it. And so now then I have to now start redefining where the value is that I'm bringing on it, which is once again unique perspective to drive business objectives and to close and drive money around it. And so you can completely demystify the whole thing by bringing them into the equation and co-creating together. And as I've started to do that, it actually becomes incredibly valuable
Yeah, absolutely.
because you're not saying, oh, you're hoodwinking me on the amount of time and work you're putting into it. No, you're just it's no different than like, am I using Illustrator or am I going to Letraset and hand scrubbing letters onto board?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that I mean what you and I do is a little bit different. So a chat in the conversation space, we could grab every Zoom call we've had and throw that into a conversation and get some sort of our philosophy, understanding, whatever.
Yeah,
On the creative side, it feels like it's a lot. There's a totally different practice necessary to build that same kind of output machine. And as we know, it
yeah,
doesn't solve the problem of your clients being opinionated with whatever they're receiving and want a
right.
pixel fit,
Okay,
if you
but
know what
so
I mean.
say, yeah, but so say what you can do, for instance, say you're doing just a digital campaign for a client, right? You can absolutely have a series of agents, one that can scrub the competition, determine the competition, scrub the competition, see what's performed, what hasn't performed. You can do the same thing with their own creative. You can break down the creative, exactly a hierarchy. You can break down the message. You can analyze the whole thing. And then you can come. This is no different than what someone should be doing just through their own just knowledge, base knowledge of being a creative. And then be able to go to the client like, hey, step one is we've actually done the work and we've identified this is the top performing, these look like the top performing things. Have you seen that as well? Now,
That's right.
it may or may not be right, but what it does signal to the client is that you're using it effectively to help achieve their goals, their creative goals. And that's what I want to see, because if you're not doing it and you're back in the place where I just want to make cool stuff, well, then go be a fine artist, right? Because
That's right.
that's building.
Yeah.
So I
Which,
do I
by
do
the way, is
understand that, but I
viable.
do totally, but I do have to say, like, I have taken videos that have been demos of things, long story, and have uploaded and had it parse through the entire video and give me the salient points of how this device, it was a functional how-to process
Yeah.
what lights worked, what they didn't work, when they triggered, did this make sense? So you can be really surprised the more you test it on what you can do. You just have to know what you're, how
Yeah.
you're setting it up and prompting.
And it's almost like what ingredients you're looking to pull out of the analysis and what information you're willing to put into it, or you're going to get different results, which almost creates almost a personality of each output that way too.
Yeah,
Seth is saying, probably just to confirm, is like personal software and process is now part of the creative process. And whatever
absolutely.
you bring and then that's what you bring to the table. So there's a reality to the engagement we have with this new technology, and knowing that this analytical tool and this breakdown tool is almost going to be a requirement to any deliverable that you have in the future.
And
And you
what's
have
great,
to understand that.
yeah, and look, once again, this is all voice to text. Like it's not like you're not coding. You're just literally saying, "Hey, I'm working with this new client. They're blah blah blah. You know, can we put together if I want to kind of like if I want to figure out what's the best plan of attack, can what should we do?" And then and you start working with it and you use it to your advantage. And anyway,
Yeah.
not saying anything. Hopefully, no one else knows. But
Yeah.
um, but
Yeah.
I think
So,
that the pre. Go ahead.
or no, I'm like, so the challenge. So the challenge in
Yeah.
front of us now is to say, hey, not only so the idea of what the proposition has been in the past, knowing that we're really kind of removing in the column of our bid form, we're removing the one that says time. Rate still exists, but time has to be pulled out of it, because the time equation is something that we're not going to look at in a traditional way. And whatever we're multiplying that rate against has to be some other idea there. That's something we're going to have to learn to communicate to our clients so that they
Hmm.
don't reduce our time down to zero and want to pay us zero because of it. Because anything
That's
times
right.
zero is zero. So
That's
we
right.
got to be
That's
very
right.
careful. So there's almost like a maturity that's necessary in explaining what the value proposition is. And it might also be when we explain it. As like Mark pointed out, like there is a process of concept and ideation before we execute it, before anyway. We might have to learn how to explain that to our clients so that we are including them in this totally new dialogue that they're
Yeah.
paying us for, opposed to it being
Yeah.
a dialogue we did for free and then paying us to do something on the back end.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So that's another evolution. And lastly,
Yeah.
it feels like whatever this technology is might actually become the solution as well. Some of us might be more tech savvy and be able to build
Right.
software that makes the machine that does the output, or use someone else's. But that the one to one or one to many kind of equation that's going to come up is something we have to decide where we're going to fit in the pipeline and be able
Yeah.
to kind of make the pieces. I
Yeah.
mean, maybe
Exactly.
last is like, where does the creative person actually be creative nowadays? Because that's the last part, is like, is it a creative tool at all, or is it an execution tool or a scale tool? And we still have to touch and feel and make something of a design or an aesthetic that we put into it. And there's always a human touch first, regardless of what is being processed in second. So that's might be the next piece of it.
Yeah, so going to the creative thing, I do go back to um uh that my second point is every technological evolution drives a creative revolution. So I think back to desktop publishing in the 80s and early desktop computers that brought in Raygun, brought in Immigrant, brought in all these new typefaces, which changed the face of how we looked at graphic design, which Tim, I know that's kind of how, going back to Imaginary Forces, how like it was a seminal moment that changed the face. And
That's it.
so yes, I don't think the last thing we should be worried about is where creative is in the process, because I think creative will be front and forward because it's this is what we do, and we harness everyone within the commercial arts has always harnessed technology and done something innovative with it, bar
I
none.
guess maybe this is where people are going to hate me today. I think if you have relied on a creative skill instead of a creative talent, you might struggle, because that skill might be what's being replaced. So if what you've become is really good at where the menus are within Photoshop so you can get something to look a certain way, or your ability to use certain filters to make that happen, that's where you don't need that skill anymore. But if you have a creative
Yeah,
talent, a know-how to connect to humans, a storytelling element,
Yeah.
something that is irreplaceable when it comes to human interaction on a creative side, I think that's going to be super valuable. But I do think a lot of people entered this part segment of industry because there was a high demand for people to sit behind computers and make digital art at a large scale. And they became a
Hmm.
part of our factory process. And I do think there's a layer of creative digital skill that is going to be removed from the pipeline.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I
that's
mean,
where
it's,
people hate me, but I think it's true.
yeah, there are no typesetters anymore, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
there will be no one making multi formats,
Yeah. Yeah.
multi-dimensional formats for digital output over a 3 day period anymore. Like
Uh, uh,
it takes seconds
complete.
to do it
Yeah.
now.
No one laying anything to tape anymore in a tape,
That's right.
in a tape,
That's right.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's there might be some confusion because it feels like it's a creative job. I'm doing something that makes something look pretty. Like, yeah, but you're just knowing what buttons to press is not the creative process. Background artists
And
don't exist anymore because you can actually just generate
right.
it.
And the challenge is anyone who's in like the production design part of the business, if you look at, once again, look back at the last 140 years, I think I'm tying that to the birth of like modern graphic design. There's
Yeah,
always, those have always, unfortunately, like the once technology has always replaced them. The
that's
challenge
right.
is like how can they find new opportunities using that technology and still, but laddering up in a production capacity that may not be on a level creative. I don't mean that pejoratively, but just more like nomenclature kind of space.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I do have a prediction that there will be a new kind of Bauhaus moment pretty soon, where like all the technology evolved,
Absolutely.
but there was no sense of order to it, and Bauhaus put order to it, and that's where we got modern
Yeah.
looking, modern, gorgeous design, form follows function, all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
now that this technology has evolved this way, it still feels like out and messy and whatever. And I think there will be a new school that shows up, and that school will be part of the future forward or future create
Yeah.
content creation that we're going to do.
Yeah.
And I think we're waiting for it. And some of the people I would love to just inspire them to become that, like to become that institute that knows what to do with this
Yeah.
technology and how it's going to work. Yeah,
I love that. I love that thinking, and I don't think it's I think it's a real. I don't think it's a wish or a dream. I think it's a reality. It
it
will
has to be.
happen. It
Yeah,
always has happened
yeah, yeah.
throughout the relationship.
Yeah, you have to
Absolutely.
order out of chaos. Like it's a human desire and human need, especially in commerce. It's somebody wants to be the judge of who wins and who loses, who's in the gallery, who's not in the gallery. Those are all parts of
Right.
it. So
Right.
the Bauhaus mentality is if you have to look it up, it's Bauhaus. If you don't know what a Bauhaus is, but it's a was an institute, a German institute that put orderliness to things in modern art or modern looking furniture design. Mid-century
Yeah.
modern is all influenced by that those structures
Yeah.
that they put in place.
Yeah. Absolutely.
All
It's a
right,
really really exciting. Most people. I'll leave it at this. Most people, previous generations, had saw one, maybe two of these changes over the course of their professional career. We're seeing them. I can name four, minimum of four that I've experienced of this nexus of creative technology, democratization, and hats off to all of us for the resilience that we have to be able to navigate through this,
yeah,
and to
for sure.
Tim for creating a forum for us to be able to talk about it. So thank you.
We have to talk about it openly. That's what I appreciate. I
Yeah.
I did put you in front of me to guard me for a second, but I do. I'm supporting you. I'm holding you up. I
No,
promise.
no problem. No problem.
I do appreciate this kind of conversation. It is evolving. It is changing, and I think there are philosophical ideas we need to discuss and practical things we have to learn, and finding that
Yeah.
balance and knowing and really kind of inspiring people to do it. So I kind of appreciate you being the siren today and just like putting it out there and making sure people are hearing the alarm and knowing it's true and wanting
Yeah.
to do something different about it. Yeah,
And let's keep talking about it.
I agree.
All right.
Anybody else? Any other thoughts? Thanks for your messages that you guys put up before today. But
Yeah, I
um,
think Steve should make a RevThink app and we can get subscriptions.
It'll be done by this afternoon.
Yeah, come on.
I have a quick question. I love like you were talking about like structure, because it's kind of flipped for us in a way with like clients because we're working on this video game and a client comes back to us and they're like, we want to change the color of the character that you've animated like a million times. Okay. And normally when an ask comes in like that, we're like scrambling and we're like, oh my God, we have to change every asset in a week. It's going to be crazy.
Yeah.
And all my team are panicking. They're like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. And I'm composed. And I'm like, why aren't you freaking out? I'm like, because there's a solution to this now, that we didn't have 2 years ago that we have now. We can just type it in and ask for the answer. And that's what we did. We just put in, how do I change color of this character? And then press bloop, 5 minutes done. Then the client says to me, here's the cash. They gave me the cash already for the change of the color.
Yeah.
That's like a week's worth of work. I did it in 5 minutes. Then I'm like, do I tell the client about this? No, I'm not going to tell the client
Yeah.
at all. No way in hell. I'm not telling this. And then like everyone's just
Well,
like,
I hope you're not being. I hope they're not going to listen to this.
no. This way. He's fine. He's gaming. He'd never listen to this. But
Tim doesn't have any followers. You don't have to worry about that too much.
Don't tell anybody. But no, but it's like it's so funny how we can flip it in a way and like getting ahead of the curve with the technology of how it can influence you as a creative director
Yeah.
for your team. Because if you can figure out ways of setting those systems in place before, because we actually risk managed the files before we jumped in, because I know my client as well, because he will come back and ask for changes in the future. I set in these little like systems that I couldn't do before with like
Yeah.
using like AI and stuff like that they weren't like using AI to generate artwork. It was using me to set up the systems that I can color pick things. So when he does come back in, it's
That's
easy
right.
to just go bloop. But you couldn't do that back in 2 years ago. But now it's amazing. So you can just jump into an After Effects file or jump into a RAW file or whatever you want to do at the beginning
Right.
and just set it up before you go. It's like getting your canvas ready with your paints before you go doing a painting.
Yeah.
I just think it's very exciting because like you couldn't do that
Yeah.
2 years ago.
Look, there is, Oliver. There is a moment right now. I don't know if it's going to be 6 months or if it's going to be 18 months in which you'll be able to get, if you're still billing time, right? You'll be able to get old time for new time, if that makes sense. And we did that early days of desktop in the
Yeah,
mid 90s. Like we were still able to bring in massive budgets because they were still thinking that we're going to a post house to do them versus just
Mm-hmm.
doing them on Macs.
that's
But
right.
my caution is knowing that there's going to be, you need to know that there's going to be an end game to that as everyone gets wise. But if you can stand in the doorway now, stand in the doorway.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's spider time right now with that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very
All
cool.
right, guys. That was great. Again,
Thank
thanks,
you,
Steve.
everyone.
Let's give
Yeah,
everyone
thank you, Tim.
a thank you
And
for
great to
Steve.
see everyone.
Yeah, you too. And we'll see you guys all next week. If you want to continue this conversation, by the way, Thursday mornings we do have confab groups at 9 o'clock. So if you want to be part of more of the hands-on workshop kind of stuff. And again, I think we're going to roll out. I've been talking to a few people that kind of have been building different agents to do things, and maybe roll out a few-day workshop if you guys are interested in learning how to build an agent or a certain kind of agent for what you're doing within your company. Kind of keep your eyes open. We're going to see if we can't pull something together in the next couple of weeks.
Perfect.
In the meantime, we'll see you guys next week on Weekly Briefing. And thanks again, Steve. And we'll see you guys all again next week. All right, later,
Perfect.
guys.
Thanks all. Bye.
Goodbye.
See you guys.